sustainability cannot just be something that you're doing on the side to cover up for all the bad things you're doing or all the emissions and so on. It has to be relevant. And I think it's important also that my colleagues, the organization understands that, this is relevant for us as a company.
Welcome to Redefiners, a podcast designed for daring leaders who are changing what it means to lead in today's increasingly complex world. I'm Nanas Motashami, a leadership advisor at Russell Reynolds Associates.
And I'm Clark Murphy, the former chief executive and also a leadership advisor. Naz and I have spent our careers exploring what works and what's next in the realm of leadership.
In each episode, we ask our guests deep and provocative questions about how they've challenged the norms and how they've redefined their organizations and ultimately themselves as leaders.
Also, you can answer this one question. How are you redefining your leadership?
Perhaps the boldest question yet.
Conversations that matter. Inspiration for us all, whether you're kicking off your career or crafting your legacy. Thanks for joining us. Let's dive in.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Redefiners. I am really looking forward to talking with our guest today. He is a global agricultural business leader who is deeply passionate about promoting the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And obviously, it's quite timely that we talk to him today, given what's going on in the world with the food and energy crises. Clark, I'm excited to meet him and hear his views, particularly on sustainability. He's one of, I think, the first and most forward-thinking leaders, not only to talk about it, but to take action on this topic. And he arguably works in one of the dirtiest industries, right? So he really does need to do something. But I'm actually also keen to learn about the man behind the achievements and understand what's driven his passion and where that stems from.
Passion is a great word. He's genuinely excited about food, about agribusiness, about sustainability, and how he works with other industries. And he's like, how can we do this together? I would call him a solutions-oriented person, plus he's an action-oriented person. So I think we're going to have a lot of fun today.
Clark, please tell our listeners who we're speaking to today.
Our guest is Svein Tore Holsether, President and CEO of Yara International, the world's leading crop nutrition company with operations in over 60 countries. Sven is chair of the Food and Nature Program for the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. He's a member of the steering committee of Imagine Food Collective and a member of the Alliance of CEO Climate Leaders at the World Economic Forum.
Sven, welcome to Redefiners.
Honored to take part. It's a podcast that I listen to as I'm running, so now to be part of it is something I've been looking forward to.
Fantastic.
So Sven, before we get into your role at Yara and how you became CEO, I want to take us back a little bit and start with the early days. And I'm going to jump straight into it because I've had a look at your LinkedIn profile. I'm going to ask, how on earth does someone who's born in Norway go to school in Utah? Of all places. Was it the skiing that drew you?
Well, that too. But this really started back in 1986. I was 14 years old and grew up in a rather small town in Norway. And that was my first trip to the United States. And, the difference with what I was used to and what I saw when I came to the US, it made such a huge impression on me, both from, a cultural perspective, but also the dynamism and how technologically advanced the US was compared to what I was used to at the time. So I decided I need to get back here as soon as possible. And as soon as possible for me was when I finished high school and I could start at university. And also, growing up in not only in Norway, but I grew up in Lillehammer, Norway, which is the Olympic city, and skied 100 days a year. So of course, that was also part of the equation.
Okay. So I was right. It was the skiing.
You were right about that part, yes. Utah, University of Utah ticked all these boxes.
Did you come from a very international family, or were you one of the first to study outside of Norway?
Well, I was the first one to go to university as well in my family. I was really fortunate to be given that opportunity. Compared to my father, who at age 15 went out to be a sailor, worked on a ship for 3 years straight, and then had to take his education part-time when he came back and did really well. But it is something that we shouldn't take for granted. And even if Norway today is a very wealthy
Yeah.
country. We don't have to go far back in history where things were very different. So it's really fortunate.
Sven, as you've worked across several industries and now obviously as CEO of Yara International, you're so well known and vocal about sustainability and action. In fact, I think we talked about in the book Sustainable Leadership about appointing a COO so that you could be more externally focused. Was there any defining or redefining moment in your career, because you were in mining and chemicals and consumer products and manufacturing? Was there any moment where you said, this is my passion and this is the moment we have to focus on sustainability?
I started in Yara in September 2015. With Yara, we produce a product, mineral fertilizer, which is responsible for half of the world's food production. With mineral fertilizer, we can help farmers to produce more food. And with that product comes a lot of responsibility as well, that we need to deliver this. Because if we don't deliver on our purpose as a company, famine will be the result. And I was able to go to the COP, the climate conference in Paris in December 2015. And we put together a quite interesting combination going into that. A think tank, Yara, together with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, with then our minister, Børge Brende, who is now the president at the World Economic Forum. And we were going to go there and talk about food because we thought that would be interesting given the footprint of agriculture, 30% of greenhouse gas emissions from agriculture. And when we had one of these sessions there to talk about food, no one came. But still being in Paris and walking around the area of the negotiations, seeing the youth engagement, the demonstrations in front of the buildings, the fact that business was getting involved, it made a huge impression on me. And I understood that everything I had thought about our strategy forward would change as a result of this. I also saw what it meant not to be prepared. And at that point, the energy industry, it came into that not prepared for what would hit them. And to try to have a reactive strategy on this isn't very helpful. And I made the decision then that we need to think completely different. We need to be a step ahead of this. So I went back to the board and said, we have a strong foundation, but everything will change. We need to think about the climate in context of our business model. And that was the start of a journey for our company that lasted about a year to redefine everything. We ended up with a new mission, a new vision, new values, and a strategy built on the sustainable development goals with broad involvement in the organization and, of course, several discussions with the board as well. So it was truly a redefining moment for me as a leader.
Did the board in the initial discussions question, push back, have any uncertainty? What was the nature of the support or the education you needed as a chief executive with the board?
Well, we had to spend time to fully understand what this meant for our industry and what it meant for us as a company, and how that would change how we produce our products and how we sell them, but also explain that sustainable development goals aren't a barrier to business. It's an enabler. And for us as a company, we had actually come quite far in already at that point to decarbonize our production, but we're not really seeing full the business opportunities connected with this. And then I had the fortunate situation that I could pull on friends as well to help me. I started to look at which company has fully understood this, which business leader understands sustainability and how that can be embedded into the business model. That answer turned out to be much clearer and easier to find than I expected. It was Unilever and Paul Polman. So I contacted Paul, and then he shares his experience on how he did this in Unilever. And I mean, he's a great leader. So he shared willingly, and rather than reinventing the wheel, I took a lot of inspiration. So I joined them into the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, into the Business and Sustainable Development Commission, World Economic Forum CEO Climate Leaders. We did Food and Land Use Coalition together. Now we're working together in the Imagine Food Collective. So it's gone from, say, a mentorship to now a friendship, really. So it's about learning from others and just copying as well. You shouldn't be ashamed of copying what others have done, but also finding what works in our industry as well.
And I would assume if no one came to the food presentation in 2015, it is extremely busy in the food discussions in this world today.
Absolutely. It's and unfortunately, with a very tragic backdrop now, with world hunger moving in the wrong direction. Every 4 seconds, a human being dies from hunger. Yeah. It is unacceptable. It's tragic and also avoidable. And that's something that we really need to work hard at solving. It is within our powers to do something about it, and everyone should do whatever they can to contribute. This is we just have to keep on pushing to take away that tragic suffering that is happening right now.
You can't have a purpose-driven company that launches into such success unless there was a foundation of who you wanted to be and how to get there. You actually wrote a book to articulate to everyone in the company who Yara could be and should be, which I have to think was the foundation for this moment of rethinking the leadership structure. Can you talk a little bit about your arrival and that book and that setting that foundation for the company?
Yes, and this was an important part of it, Clark, that, how do we bring the entire organization with us on this journey? Because that's really the only way, if we have all our 18,000 employees supporting that mission. And in order to get there, we went back in our history and we asked ourselves the question, why do we exist as a company? And that should be our purpose. And the very start of our company was the modern production of fertilizer. Mm-hmm. That was 1905. Europe was facing famine. And science had to step up and figure out how do we produce mineral fertilizer at scale. And that was invented here in Oslo by our founder, Professor Birkeland. So part of what we're doing is to grow more food for a growing population. So first part of our mission is to responsibly feed the world. And then we added and protect the planet. So it's about growing more food, but doing that sustainably. Mm-hmm. But we have to explain that. How is that relevant for the core of what we're doing? And that's where I thought it was very important that we bring in everyone on the shop floor as well. So this is relevant to what they do, and they really felt that. And then we made a book with focus on our colleagues and how they work on this every day, explaining the stories around this. And I wanted this to really be a personal thing. And I couldn't meet all our 18,000 employees, but we put this together in a booklet. And then as a sort of a handshake from me to every employee, I decided that, okay, I'm going to sign all of these 18,000 books myself as well. I didn't do the math on that, how big a task that was. And I had a moment where I was thinking maybe I should shorten my name or something to make this easier. But I did it, and it's not that it's such an impressive task to sign 18,000 books, but it's the impact that it had. And right now, I think we could challenge pretty much any company on our employees' ability to tell what our purpose is. And the strength of that, when people know the purpose, that's how we got through COVID. That's how we're dealing with a very complex situation in the food system right now, because our employees understand why.
And some of the discussions that I'm having around the world with board members in particular, and they say, how do we start? What are the obstacles? How do we get over the obstacles? And it's interesting to see Yara's clarity on who you are as a company, and then the amazing things you're doing. And then other companies, who I won't name here now, who didn't get the purpose out in front and then faltered in either the product or the service or the process. I think that's one of the great lessons I had from our conversation is this certainty of clarity around the purpose of the company. And then amazingly, the operations, whether that's restructured or not, tend to fall in place when there's clarity. I think it's a fantastic story on leadership.
Sven, is that your secret sauce for getting the talent that you need to make sure that your sustainability efforts are moving forward? Because it's really hard to find sustainable leaders to run initiatives and to kind of think sustainably and pay it more than just lip talk. How have you been able to do that at Yara so successfully? Is the whole kind of putting the purpose and mission front and center part of the secret?
Well, Nana, how much time do I have to answer it?
Go for it.
No problem. Our listeners are all on a run right now, so they're just running. It's okay.
No, well, I think it's incredibly important that you explain how this is relevant to the core. Sustainability cannot just be something that you're doing on the side to cover up for all the bad things you're doing or all the emissions and so on. It has to be relevant, and I think it's important also that my colleagues, the organization understands that this is relevant for us as a company. It is an area where we can influence as well, and I think it's key both to retain talent and to recruit, but also going the extra mile when you have this clarity of the purpose. Reality has changed a lot up through the years as well, that people want to work in companies that are purpose driven. Who goes to work just for a paycheck? Well, we actually do pay our employees in Yara as well, but it's more than that. The reality today is that we're connected almost all the time, whether it's through emails and mobile phones. It's much more blurry what is work and what is free time now. So if you can only justify the work that you're doing because of the paycheck, I don't think you will not be able to retain or recruit. But if it's meaningful, something where you see that you can have an impact, where your product is part of helping farmers to produce more food, to reduce famine, to reduce poverty, I think it's a very strong force.
We'll be right back to our conversation with Sven after a quick break with Sarah Galloway, a managing director in our London office and co-leader of our global sustainability sector. Sarah delves into the transformational power of moonshots.
Mark Twain famously said, "Necessity is the mother of taking chances," and almost no topic inspires more passion, urgency, and necessity from stakeholders as the drive for sustainability. To achieve this, the world needs more daring decision-makers and innovators who recognise that the transformation needed to make real progress will not happen through incremental improvements to business as usual. Instead, it will require bold, sustainable leaders who push their organisations towards exponential change and business model innovation. We call these leaders moonshotters, executives who are committing to bold action and disruptive innovation without necessarily knowing what the exact solution is or how they'll get there. But they're not just making things up as they go, not at all. Moonshotters build a powerful story and leverage big, visible projects that people can get behind. They employ analysis, research, and calculation in their moonshots, underpinned by an urgent understanding that there is much greater risk in not going for it. They challenge traditional approaches and are willing to disrupt their business and their industry. Moonshotters cut through bureaucracy to find solutions that do away with the trade-off between profitability and sustainability. And they resist being a 100%er, those who try to get everything perfect before they launch, because they know that perfect is the enemy of good. As Adidas CEO Kasper Rorsted put it, great athletes don't play to not lose, they play to win. If you'd like to learn more about moonshots and how you can turn your sustainability promises into tangible action, check out Sustainable Leaders by Clark Murphy, available in print, digital, and audiobook.
And now back to our conversation with Sven.
Sven, you've written about rebuilding trust as a key part of the UN's 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And actually, you've said it should be goal number 18. Why is trust so critical? when it comes to sustainability and climate change?
Because we're getting around to make these changes way too late. In 1979, the so-called Charney Report actually explained with scientific proof that if we didn't change the trajectory on emissions, what is right now happening to the climate would be a reality. And yet, even with that report and with a lot of passionate people trying to convey this message, we haven't done much as the world in these last few decades. So what would have been possible in the early 1980s with a bit of tweaks here and there individually, we're long past that now. So the only way to get this done is through a complete transformation of societies and industries. And we need to do that in collaboration, full value chains. It doesn't help if only Yara reduces its emissions if you're not able to work through the value chain to help the farmers reduce their emissions, to work together with food companies and retailers and consumers. How do we think of this in totality? But then we're up against a huge challenge on how do we do that at scale, and how do we do it in a way that isn't cost prohibitive, and then we need to have the value chain approach, making sure that we link consumers with the producers, and then in order to get there, we need trust. And unfortunately, we live in a world that is short of just that. So we need to find the coalition of the willing to get started somewhere to show what is possible. But we're not going to be able to get this done at scale and fast enough unless we focus a lot on trust and building that.
Yeah.
You talk about the value chain from the farmer to the retailer. Heineken talks about from barley to the bar, in terms of the value creation. We were facing enough food crises to begin with, and now the invasion in the Ukraine has made it so much more dramatic.
You know, the food system has historically done a pretty good job at reducing hunger. If you look at the realities, at least up until 2020, over decades, world hunger has been reduced significantly. But what we didn't take into account was the climate cost of this, the emissions. We didn't understand how vulnerable the supply chains were when they were tested during COVID. And we didn't understand how politically exposed these food systems were either, when you look at the how much the world relies on Russia when it comes to food production, on inputs, raw materials to fertilizers. And when Russia goes to war on Ukraine, which is a major food producer, it demonstrates how challenging this is. And it comes very close to us because on February 26, on day 3 of the war, a missile hit the building where our people were working in Kiev. So to see the Yara logo on a building that has a huge hole in it, it becomes very real. Fortunately, none of our employees were physically harmed because of this, but it made a huge impression. It's tragic and difficult to see. And at the same time, you know, as our colleagues are sitting in makeshift bomb shelters in Ukraine, we also have to defend that we have significant sourcing in Russia. How do we do this? So what we chose to do is to be super transparent. Same message internally as externally, trying to explain how global the food system is, the impact of disruptions there, but also openly discussing the dilemma that on one hand, we have employees in a desperate situation in Ukraine. We see the Ukrainian people, what they're going through, all the implications of the war. And at the same time, we're buying raw materials from Russia. That's a very challenging dilemma. But we need to also think about the impact on famine across the world. Yeah. But also, let's think phase 2, a phase 2 where we take away this weapon from Putin as well, and build a more resilient food system. We've had to make huge changes to our supply sourcing from other places than Russia, and then back to our organization, what they have been able to do, both in shifting raw material purchases, but also with the energy situation in Europe. If I've been asked if it was even close to possible to do what they have been doing in terms of keeping production going in Europe, I never thought it would be possible. But yet they're stepping up, they're going the extra mile and are able to do this.
You've talked a lot about the power of partnerships. And a two-part question. The first, as I recall, you said you would focus on your own, a number of years ago, methane emissions around uses of ammonia and production of fertilizer. And when you had your house in order, you would then go to your suppliers, and then ultimately an ecosystem that involves Maersk Shipping and Copenhagen airports and the government of Singapore, Keppel bunkering. Can you talk a little bit about your approach to faster progress through ecosystems?
Sure. So it is important that we do whatever we can internally first. And if I look at what we've been able to do in our company since 2005, it's already reducing emissions by about 50%. And I said half joking here that if Yara was a country, I could lean back and say that we've done our part of the Paris Agreement. But the thing is, we're not a country, and the world is not on track, as we see from the United Nations as well. But in a way, the first 50% are much easier than the next 50% because that requires change of technologies and also enabling farmers to get paid for sustainability as well. So then comes the phase where we need to think full value chains and show what we can do with our products and solutions to reduce emissions further. This is doable, but it requires a different way of working where we have to be much more externally oriented. But it also opens up opportunities. Who would have thought that 5-6 years ago that Yara would be stepping into the energy sector, which we can with utilizing green ammonia or blue ammonia that we can produce, and that could be the zero emission, fossil free, potentially fuel for the shipping sector, as Maersk and other leaders in the industry are looking to decarbonize their value chains and their ships. We have an infrastructure built to serve the fertilizer industry, but it could take on a different role, enabling the hydrogen economy. So this also opens up business opportunities, and then we need to recognize that and drive that with force. So it's you have to do everything you can internally, and then you turn around also and see what can we do in partnerships, and then that opens up new and exciting chapters for us as a company.
Sven, we can carry on and on and on this topic. Thank you for your wonderful insights. We do like to end each podcast on a slightly different note with some rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
I'll do my best.
Okay, question number 1. What are the books that you're reading now?
I'm reading one book several times, and that's Saving Earth, which really is a story about the opportunity that we had back in 1979 with the Charney report, and some key learnings from that. And then I also read books about diversity and how to bring diversity into the workplace.
Second question, do you have a hidden talent that we should know about?
Well, I don't know if it's a talent, but I do enjoy running, and it turns out that I can run for extended periods of time, more than I thought possible.
What's the longest run this year?
Well, actually, I've been on runs lasting up to 38 hours, but I participated in the Norwegian Championship for 24-hour running in November last year, and actually won my class from age 45 to 49, though. In that, happy that I'm in the men's class, because if I'd been in the women's class, I would not have won.
Next one. If it couldn't be Norway, where in the world would you want to live?
Tokyo.
Fantastic. Next question. Do you have a morning ritual?
Coffee.
And the last question. If you could have an extra hour of free time every day, how would you use it apart from running?
Well, it is an easy answer. Is spend more time with family.
Well, my daughter just finished the 40-mile run called the Teton Crescent, which is all the
I know that
tops
one.
of the mountains in the Tetons,
Yeah.
which she just ran. I think you need to run the Teton Crescent next year, okay? That's your challenge.
I heard about it. It's a super nice one. It's on the list.
There you go. Well, Sven, thank you for making time for us and for the inspiration of transforming companies to make sure the world is better fed, responsibly fed, and then partnering with others to launch into new businesses you probably had no idea you would be launching someday. In fact, you looked at how you produce and sell food as an enabler for the company, not an obstacle when thinking about the SDGs. And you worked with others, you learned from others. We talk often about LQ and the learning quotient, where you turned mentorships into friendships in thinking how you could be a better leader and learning from others. And as you say, don't be ashamed to copy. Everyone can learn, but we also need to copy to move things forward ahead. There's no shame in copying. And sustainability is core to the success of your business. And that core of sustainability is how you recruit and retain talent, and more importantly, how the talent goes the extra mile. That you'll take the weapon of food away from Putin, working with your industry, with farmers, with the value creation, the supply chain to say that will be the weapon of success, not of defeat, that food will be the way we take care of the world, not hold them hostage. When it came to emissions and sustainability, you made a very public statement that you would get your own house in order first, and then we went to the value creation from the farmers to the retailers to say, how will we look at everything we do to make it more successful? And finally, I think that one of the greatest lessons here that every business should learn, people ask us all the time, is sustainability a hindrance? You've created a new revenue stream because of the ammonia used in your production to now create clean ammonia and clean hydrogen as fuel for shipping. So this concept of looking for yet new opportunities as you rethink how sustainability affects your business, reducing the obstacles, trust your people, and think about disruptive innovation. Wow. Sven, you're a great defining leader for us, and thank you for joining us on Redefiners.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me.
Absolutely. And enjoy running while you listen to this podcast.
Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Redefiners. For more dynamic insights from leaders from across industries and around the world, listen to Redefiners wherever you get your podcasts.
And to learn more or get in contact with us, visit our website at russellreynolds.com, find us on LinkedIn, and follow us on Twitter at RAOnLeadership. See you next time. Do you have a question on leadership, career development, joining a board, or other topics you'd like to ask one of our consultants? Well, now's your chance. Send us your question. Email us at redefiners@russellreynolds.com for an opportunity to have your question answered on the podcast by one of our experts. See you next time on Redefiners.